Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. I'm your host, Victor, and on this podcast, we go week to week, breaking something down, a streaming favorite. And I'll be doing a little bit of that this week, but primarily in this episode of the show, Sona and I have actually rewatched Gone Girl, which just premiered on Netflix or returned to Netflix recently. One of the all-time great psychological thrillers, especially of the most recent era. So very easy for everybody to watch. And Sona and I had a real blast rewatching this excellent film, which, like so many other Fincher films, seem prescient in retrospect. But of course, on these Friday episodes, we've primarily been discussing Cape Fear, and I will be breaking down this most recent crazy episode, Mongrel. So bear with me for a little while I walk through that episode before we get into the Gone Girl breakdown. Of course, jump to the Gone Girl content if you'd prefer, or stick around and hear my breakdown of the current episode, an episode called Mongrel, I believe. If you are, like me, still watching this show, hate watching it, laughing at it, confused by it, compelled by it, repelled by it, some combination of those things. I do think the show continues to be popular, so I guess this formula worked. Definitely not the show I was expecting to see. A quick couple of show notes. In the most recent episode, Darren and I ranked the Christopher Nolan films from worst to first, and also discussed the recently announced Emmy nominations. If you want a lot more Christopher Nolan content, check out our Patreon. Check the show notes for the link to our Patreon. All our Patreon content is currently free, and Alan and I have walked through quite a few, almost the entirety of Nolan's filmography, because of course the Odyssey's coming next week. And Darren and I will be reviewing it once it premieres. I have already purchased my IMAX screen tickets, and I'm sure that movie will be much discussed once it premieres. Also briefly discussed in the conversation with Darren, and speaking of Javier Bardem, his better half, Penelope Cruz, is currently appearing in this excellent romantic comedy drama, The Invite. Just four people getting together, two couples, for a dinner party that doesn't quite go as anyone expected, starring one of the stars being Olivia Wilde and directed by Olivia Wilde, and going into wide release this very week. And don't read anything about this film, guys. Just go see it. It is hilarious, but it is a tough watch. So go see it on date night or not? Question mark. But when I think about how Obsession of all films became a date night movie, maybe The Invite is going to piggyback off of some of that dynamic. Definitely not a horror film. I want to be clear about that. I am paralleling it to a horror film. Definitely not a horror film at all, in no way. But it does have its surprises. So Bardem has been winning the weekly battle of the sexes here between him and his wife, life partner. But I think she gets the better of him this week with this wide release of this very entertaining film, which I saw last week and loved it. And Darren has now seen it with his wife. And anyone who was curious, we discussed it the day he was planning to go see it with his wife, and he's seen it and he loved it. So thumbs up from Darren as well. So check out the Patreon. Give us a 5-star review if you appreciate the show. We'll be kicking off 2 new shows in the near future, both on Apple TV, The Pilot, Lucky, and The Savant. Those will be both premiering before the end of the month. So all that is to come. Join our Patreon. Email us if you have any questions or comments. needssomeintroduction@gmail.com. Okay, with that all out of the way, let's talk about Mongrel. I do feel trapped in having to follow this show to the end, which is not, you know what? This is kind of a mistake on my part. Not that you can ever perfectly watch a show the right way, but perhaps if I was just casually watching this and being like, what crazy thing's going to be on this show this week, I would be having more of a blast. As some people, I assume, people are watching this purely for the what the heck is going on this show. And if you're watching it that way, thumbs up to you. For me, having to try to create content out of it, man, it is tough. I got to tell you, tough. And also, I do apologize if you are now pot committed to finishing this whole thing, and it was because you've been following it here on the podcast. I do apologize, guys. I'm not sure I steered you the right way this particular time, but I'm still committed to finishing this thing off. Okay, previously on, I loved seeing these, like, if you missed it, quick catch up on what happened last week. Zach got his hands on his dad's LSD and macrodosed the entire team, the entire family, shattering his mom's sobriety. His sister, on the other hand, never sober. A drone shows up. She shoots a hole in the wall, which gets commented on this week. Max is living across the street, has lured or kidnapped the family cat. Natalie's way too comfortable with him, and maybe that's a giveaway for what's going to happen this week, which we've predicted for almost the entire run of the show, by the way. But of course, the big final moments of last week. The horribly undersupervised Zach has a giant hole cut in the wall of his closet because apparently Nevia's been living there the whole time, like a possum in the walls, and like a feral possum comes flying out the walls, and Zach and his bloody foot wander off across the street to go hang out with Max. Zach and Max. This week, astonishingly, picks up immediately with last week. It didn't abandon everything, like, a dead body that still is unaccounted for here, that's been undiscussed for 2 whole weeks, and apparently hasn't bothered Anna, Nevia's mom, potentially dead or definitely dead and potentially undiscovered. No, this week we pick up immediately where we left off. Nevia is still taunting Anna and Natalie. We now know the code to the gun locker. Importantly, so does Natalie. And Nevia knows, despite being held at gunpoint, Anna does not have it within her to shoot her in the head, but Natalie will at least pepper spray her. Zach, meanwhile, by taking way too much, not of the LSD, but of some devil's root, probably, has convinced himself that he's actually Max's son. Has he replaced Max in his mind? He wants to, can we go fishing? Can we go fishing? I don't think they ever fished together, but somehow Max is now his dad. Tom heads over and reclaims Zach. And he's been waiting to go off this whole entire time. Max has been setting up this whole time. And as the police and some onlookers arrive, he's been goaded into this by Max. Bardem's performance, absolutely hilarious, by the way. The whole whispering, he's my son now. He's my son now. And then when Tom drags the son away, he's just the boy. He's just the boy. All of this is very funny. But most importantly, of course, we know that Tom has now beaten him up. And again, this is a very bad look for the family. The family regroups. Tom is not looking good. Amy and Tom see this is what happens when you don't go to work every single day. This is why, I've been complaining this whole time. They should have taken a little bit of time off from work to keep an eye on the son. Maybe this wouldn't have happened. Man, having the family around, having the parents around has not helped things at all. These people need to keep themselves occupied. They do have a conversation with Noah and with Ray. Noah, at least, this character has been so excited. This is such a switch for her to be so excited to have Max around and the poster boy for the cause. So on the one hand, I'm glad that they don't make this kind of arbitrary, what are you guys talking about? He's probably still innocent. You guys are overreacting. At least they're not playing that game. But it does seem like a quick switch in position for her here. And of course, Jamie Hector playing Ray. I knew this I got to tell you, this is the one thing that really pissed me off this week. I just knew that Ray is the only person in this whole entire show that is acting like a normal human being. And therefore, he's not going to make it on the show. And I was so worried about this, by the way. As soon as he showed up, loved him in The Wire, of course. And he's been in Bosch, and he's actually worked pretty steadily since The Wire. But in general, an underutilized actor. And I really wanted it, but I just knew in the back of my mind, he's not going to have a lot to do here, and he's going to die. And they killed him off. I mean, unless some really weird twist next week, they have killed this character off. And I really feel like they did not give him enough to do, but at least he did get to be the one sane person on this entire show. So speaking about all these dad issues, Zach now thinks that Max is his dad, but Max now is almost certainly Natalie's dad. Again, something we speculated on for a very long time here on the podcast. And he is contributing his beard hair to be DNA analyzed. So I assume that we will get a DNA analysis. Now, is it possible that this is why they're somewhat simpatico? Or is there yet another shoe to drop? Maybe it's somebody else that's her dad. We have it all over this, right? Is it Tom her dad? Is Max her dad? Is her dad her dad? Everybody on the show seems to have a different theory as who is the dad. Maybe that is another shoe to drop. Maybe Anna was assaulted or something and didn't ever want to admit anybody and got into a relationship right away to cover up that the assault was the actual cause of the pregnancy. And that could be yet another reveal yet to come, because she does seem to play very innocent when she has an opportunity to play it straight with Natalie. But everyone does seem, and the math does seem to make sense. And I do honestly believe with Max giving her his beard to test, that he does believe he is her father, which of course we speculated all the way back in episode 1 or episode 2 when he meets her for the first time and says, I just wanted to see you. And doesn't say it to Anna, says it to her, to Natalie. I mean, we know he's been hiding something from the very beginning, so this could be that reveal. And of course, he also threatens Anna that I could have said something earlier, but I never did. And he does knock her out, by the way, or plan to knock her out by infusing the snacks he brings for his daughter, or supposed daughter, with some kind of knockout drug. He also uses her gun to kill Ray. So is that a way to have her under his thumb yet again? Pretty conniving if he's really trying to make amends with his daughter, but I'm not trying to, I honestly can't track all this right now. And I don't think the show cares. It's more about creating incidents. So maybe I'm overanalyzing all this. But there definitely is, of course, this huge theme of dads. Who is your dad? Who's your real dad? What's your biological dad? And what's your upbringing? What does that, how do those things intersect? And how do they make him the person that you are now? And of course, it's Anna's dad shows up, a terrible dad who's trying to make amends, and they're asking him to commit a crime to get back into the family fold. But he is blackmailing them as well, saying, I will do this for you if I can have a relationship with my grandkids. And of course, what they want him to do is to plant the devil's breath, I think it's called, that they found huge amounts of in the house. They've been doping up the kids, or Navia probably, and now they want him to put the drugs back into Katie's house and then frame him for it. Okay, a couple of things. I'm jumping all over the place. But there's a lot going on here because I want to talk about the dad so much. But first of all, this show, I mean, maybe Anna doesn't see all this, but the show, we can see it as viewers. This show is all about surveillance and the internet and how you're always being watched, even when you don't know you're being watched. So Katie, of course, is planning to have a trap when they go and plant the drugs in his house, and his dad is going to be on camera. And then will he call the police? Will he blackmail them with that information, being like, you're going to look really bad in the public eye? But the surveillance aspect of that is definitely going to play into it. But one more dad we have to talk about. One more dad here. Natalie wants to go on this road trip with Max. She does bring a gun now that she knows the combination to the safe. This is still an unbelievably stupid thing for her to do. There is a much higher than zero chance in her mind belief that he is the mastermind of all of this. And she's like, I want to go on a road trip with you. Are you setting me up? Are you going to attack me? Are you going to kill me? I didn't tell you to get in my car. This is just like the text messages. Look, I didn't send these text messages at all. Oh, maybe he deleted some of the conversation points in between. Maybe he falsified this entire conversation chain. Come on. She's a teenage girl. She should know how these things work nowadays. She's like, oh, I guess you were telling Navia not to try to murder us all. Very interesting if they are actually half sisters. Really gross, by the way. But it does remain to be seen whether his theory is true that Navia wanted to be his daughter. And Natalie, the jealousy there is that Natalie is definitely the daughter, or at least that's what Max believes. And that's what leads to this jealousy and this toxic relationship between the two of them. But of course, they go on this road trip. She jumps in the car with this guy. Look, everything here in the show makes no sense at all. Okay, I'm just rolling with it. My forehead slap multiple times this episode, especially when she gets in the car with this guy, which you knew she was going to do. You knew she was going to do it, but it still is forehead slappingly stupid. And as soon as she gets there, just to add a little flavor, I don't think this character is going to come back. Maybe he will, who knows? But I don't think he's going to come back. But just to add a little flavor, she encounters somebody who likes to manage dogs. The neighbor boy, Luke. Gosh, you're pretty. Can I kiss you? Do not kiss this guy. She does not, but that does mean that she gets to a very uncomfortable interaction between Max. Of course, this whole thing, Max is reuniting with his sweet dad, the one who put him in cages and treated him like a dog. And again, another thing that we speculated on here on the podcast, Juliette Lewis's character, Crystal, turns out to be his adoptive daughter, half daughter. A lot of half incest going on in this show, by the way, and I don't like it. She does get warned by dad right away that they're onto you. This all happens, by the way. Really nice interaction here between this dad and the wife, still in the picture. Apparently, when mom happens to come on the patio, on the porch, she's like, Anna, is that you, Anna? So really speaks to the fact that they were a lot closer back then. Second of all, she doesn't really look like Anna to me, but hey. And of course, this is what plants the seed in Natalie's mind. He's my dad. Anna slept with him. but he also is trying to track down Crystal. You know who else is trying to track down Crystal is poor Ray, who's already there and is taking some pictures. So I guess there's some evidence that might pop up on his phone. But of course, he ends up dead, all because Natalie ate. Don't eat anything this guy gives you. What are you thinking, man? She, of course, conveniently, I'm like, what is he going to do? Is he going to drug her, kidnap her? No, this is all just so she can conveniently sleeping when he's killing off Ray. I don't know what his plan was. He drugged the girl to what end? He didn't know he was going to run into Ray. Was it so that she would be passed out when he confronted Crystal? Because maybe he thought he had to kill Crystal? I don't know. Or maybe she would be drugged when he went to meet his dad and didn't want that to be. I don't know. Why did he drug her? I don't know. But then when she acknowledges the fact that she is his daughter, or believes it anyway, he baptizes her in the same river where he was baptized. She says she doesn't feel any different. And he's like, because you already knew everything. Or is it, like I said, I actually think maybe it's too neat that he's her dad. But I do think Max believes it to be true. Of course, Max, as he drops off Natalie, leaves her with his beard hairs and also acts like, oh my gosh, you brought a gun? You brought a gun? Why would you think I would hurt you? We're friends. But most importantly, of course, is the fact that that gun is going to go back into Tom's gun safe, and it's the gun that has killed Ray. I do think the cat is now back in the house. That was part of the excuse that Max used to talk to Natalie. But maybe that cat will go back across the street. I have to say that when you see Bardem licking his chops practically and eyeing up, he's playing with his food now. He's really playing with his food. I think his main inspiration is not De Niro's previous incarnation of this character, but perhaps it is the cat itself. Or maybe the cat, that's a very posh looking cat. It's well groomed, a fancy cat. But you know what? The fancy cat, deep down inside, still a cat when push comes to shove. And maybe it's Anna. Anna is the real cat. She needs to unleash her inner domesticated cat. She has to undomesticate the cat. She does mention that she got too comfortable. She overcorrected from her true nature. So maybe she's going to go on a bender, and the inner cat, Anna, for those who know, she's not a night bitch. Maybe she's a night cat. That's a reference to an Amy Adams movie. Maybe that's what all this is for. Maybe Max wants to unleash the inner Anna cat. But Bardem, of course, playing Max, playing with his food, has brainwashed Zach into believing he's the dad, and may actually be Natalie's actual biological dad. So this is recreating the family. I guess Anna's the one missing piece, right, for him to recreate his family. So that's what's going on in this show. What the heck? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know. They're going to end up on Cape Fear, of course, at some point. There's only 3 episodes to go. I don't know what's going to happen next week. I presume Anna's dad's going to get caught planting the evidence. And by the end of that episode, someone's going to be, you guys need to get away. And they decide to go down to Cape Fear for one reason or another. And that's when the final confrontation will probably last a couple of episodes. And I honestly don't even like Max for being clever. He's too obvious at what he's doing. These people are supposedly lawyers, supposedly have dealt with these type of people before, and are so naive in everything they do. The kids absolutely despise their parents for some reason. I mean, the parents have lied. They have kept things from their kids. But, there's not even any kind of empathy when Natalie's like, oh, look, you just get your dad's just like someone who'll just bitch slap whoever's around him. And you grew up like that inside of a cage. I never had that kind of an upbringing. Can't even be like, well, at least my family took care of me and never treated me this badly. Nope. These kids just seem entitled and annoying. The parents are completely non-sympathetic and have probably committed criminal acts. Max is not a victim and is probably a bigger monster than we've even revealed here on the show so far. It is very hard to care about anybody here on the show, except for poor Ray. I got to tell you, this was a big turnoff for me in this episode, that the one character that I'm like, well, at least there's one character that I can relate to who's actually good at his job and is giving good advice, and that is Ray, and they've killed him off. I guess I now am kind of rooting for Crystal. I mean, who am I going to end up rooting for on this show? I don't know. But anyway, 3 more weeks to go. I'm not really going to be right about any of my predictions because I assume the show's going to be crazy bonkers at the end. But we'll see. Much more fun and much more of a compelling watch, the exceptionally well-made film Gone Girl, which, as I mentioned, is recently available again on Netflix. And Sona and I had a lot of fun discussing it again. Here's the conversation. All right, Sona. So in our World Cup catch-up, the U.S. is out. Spain advances over the Portuguese, unfortunately.
Sorry.
Your son's very happy about that, I'm sure.
My son's happy and you're sad. I'm sorry.
And Argentina has been making some very fun to watch games. So see if they keep that streak going as well.
Mm-hmm.
Are you planning to buy tickets to the finals?
Yeah, as soon as I find that extra $32,000 laying around. That's how much the tickets were when I went on the FIFA resale site a couple of weeks ago. $32,000 per ticket.
Yep.
So I know that was just a single point in time and a single data point, but I would imagine that these tickets are going to be sky high in price. And you know what? We got our round of 32 tickets. My husband and son had a wonderful time. Hopefully my kid's going to remember it years from now. And it's all good. Quit while you're ahead.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. And if France goes all the way, you get to say, your son gets to say, I saw. Maybe in his mind, years later, he'll conflate it.
Yes.
I saw the championship.
Isn't that funny how memory can do that?
We can hope that our flawed memories could pay off even more so than you would expect in this particular case. All right, Sona. So did a quick recap of the Cape Fear episode to keep everybody up to date. And we'll dip back into that show next week, you and I. But this week, part of the reason I had suggested this, just by chance, I don't even know why I had thought of doing this. I was like, hey, why don't we look at other films we like that are in this kind of genre that we haven't talked about in a while. And the first one that came to mind, of course, was Gone Girl. And we have mentioned it here on the podcast multiple times that it's just never available to stream when we have kind of a hole in the calendar that we could possibly slot it into. And by chance, I brought it up to you last week, and actually it was available on Netflix. And of course, as you would have expected from Netflix in general, that this jumped immediately into the top 10 and has been in the top 10 movies around the world for the entire week that it's been out. And I presume that everyone will be able to watch this because almost all of our listeners have Netflix subscriptions. And this is probably going to be available for at least the next week, if not multiple weeks. As a matter of fact, Netflix, of course, has that big Quentin Tarantino script to the Brad Pitt starring Once Upon a Time in Hollywood spin-off movie, which Fincher directed. Tarantino wrote, but it's Fincher directing. And I have a feeling that Netflix is going to bring all of Fincher's films back into rotation because there's always this, renewed interest in a director like Nolan has about to have The Odyssey come out next week. And I'm sure all his films will be streaming all over the place in the next week or so. Anyway, all that is to say, here's an opportunity finally, Sona, after all that, to talk about Gone Girl, which is out 12 years ago now. It's pretty shocking. And I don't think I have seen this. I think I saw it. I probably saw it twice. Definitely watched it with my wife. This is probably towards the beginning of our relationship. We probably saw it on a date.
It's romantic that way.
Isn't it? And she has never seen it again. I think I have probably watched it one time since. And we discussed it. I had seen it by myself just this week to discuss it with you. And she has not seen it since when it first came out. And she could have a whole conversation about the film. She remembered it vividly in a way that she normally doesn't for most of the films we watch.
Because it resonated with her.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. So that's my first question, actually. So, of course, I'm a big fan of the film. I'm a big fan of Fincher in general. I think this is one of my favorite Fincher films, and out of many films, and I'm a big fan of his in general. So I've also read the book, so feel free to bring in the book. If you're going to spoil the book, I think we'll keep the conversation only talking about the movie, and then we'll shout out when we get to the spoilers. And definitely anything that is a book spoiler, we'll shout out differently if there is any kind of variation, just to let everybody kind of know where we're going to go. But we'll be spoiler-free initially, but I think we're going to get spoilers pretty quickly with this one. So, but anyway, Sona, you've been wanting to discuss this. I know you love this film. Tell me about it. What's your relationship with the film? How many times have you watched it? What was it like to revisit it?
So I actually did read the book first, and I love the book. The book is fantastic. it's the first Gillian Flynn novel that I read. So she does have kind of a distinctive style that always involves a plot twist of some sort, but this was my first exposure to it, which I always think is the most fun, is, when that device is completely new to you. Love the book. The movie, I feel, from my recollection, I've only read the book once. I've seen the movie twice or three times. So my recollection is that the book and the movie pretty closely track each other, or at least I don't remember the initial time I watched the movie, which was pretty close to when I came out, thinking, oh, this is so different than the book, which is something you do think sometimes when you've read both the book and when you've read the book and seen the movie. But what I love about it is it does so many different things at once.
Yeah.
It's a really fun ride as far as the actual plot and the mystery unraveling. And it's a really interesting examination into relationships and how they form and how they evolve. And I will always come back to that cool girl monologue.
Yeah, of course.
Is so amazing. I love what she did there. I think it's brilliant. I think it encapsulates so much that women deal with, and maybe put her finger on it in a way that, at least for me, I had not seen it distilled in that way before.
Yeah, I think it bakes it. I think part of the reason it resonates so well is because it's so baked into the film itself, that the film is about, in a marriage, two people who supposedly are the most intimate they can be with any other person, and how you are still like a mystery to each other, and the performance of marriage itself. And that resonates. But then, of course, and here's where I think the movie, this is definitely in the book, by the way, but I think it's more focused on the movie. And it's because I think it is what Fincher's more interested in. However, it's definitely in the original version. And this is Flynn adapting her own book into a screenplay, by the way. So she's a screenwriter as well. Although Fincher, although he never writes anything, is very much like, write that again until he gets what he wants. So I'm sure there was a collaboration between the two of them. But all these themes are in there already in hers. I'd say the book is more focused on that story, like the two different diaries, which is different in the movie. Of course, we primarily only hear from her diary perspective. What's her character's name again?
I've only got Rosamund Pike. Amy Dunn.
Amy Dunn, right? Amy. That we mostly have her tone rather than his, which is different. The book, we kind of see his competing narrative and how it sometimes makes us think he might be the perpetrator, and this kind of more, and that's all streamlined down in the film. But once again, I think the thing that the focus changes a little bit more, and part of this is I think it's Fincher's interest, but also I think it is just because it is this visual representation of the world, that where when you read the book, for me anyway, I'm so in her voice and his voice and the marriage, and there definitely is this like tabloid culture around it, but it's like the dressing on the salad. It's the extra, right? And in the film, it really feels, once again, because we're talking about a visual medium, it so much feels like it is about how we impose a narrative like on a married couple or on our spouse. But then, of course, it goes beyond that. It's like the way that he is judged in the public eye. And of course, her being an author, Amy, that she uses that and uses the bias and knowing what the cultural narrative is going to be, uses that to basically frame him. And that, of course, is in the book, but I feel like it's even more present in the movie. And part of that, I think, also is because very smartly, the first half of the movie, there's a lot of red herrings. Like, is it his demented dad? Is it one of the homeless people? There was a man who was in the neighborhood who hangs out at the mall, and she bought a gun and she talked to some guy. So was she afraid of him? And then they show up with their bats at the mall. And so all there is that it's more of a traditional murder mystery early on, where it's like, did the husband do it? Or is it one of these red herring characters? And the movie just really streamlines that down, because Fincher's just true. Like, Fincher's like, no, I want to know about the marriage and I want to know about
No,
like her
that's true.
psychology, of course. And
it's not a short movie, by the way,
it's
either.
not, right.
So, I mean, imagine if they had tried to include all of that.
Well, that's what I really love.
These were good decisions, I think.
I completely agree. And that's why I love the adaptation, because in the book, the reveal of the twist is smack dab right dead center in the book. And in the movie, it's almost exactly dead center. It's like maybe 5 minutes early, but almost exactly right in the middle of the movie as well. Which is to say that this pretty long movie, over 2.5 hours long, spends that first hour and change with mostly him and the investigation and this world building of like, and like the media frenzy that's building up, and the mystery, like this really wonderful TikTok script and directing of pulling you through from one clue to the other. Like literally he has clues and then we have clues, and it's just really just so much fun to watch. Even though you know exactly what's going to happen the second or third time you watch it, it still is just so propulsive, just fun. Such an incredibly well-made film. And all those things are really great. But like you said, you really spend a lot of time in that, and it's not bloated at all because it is so rich.
No, it moves. Yeah.
It's so great. It does not feel long
at all. The casting here, so good.
Oh my God. So
as
good.
Well. Just the perfect casting. And especially because I have not watched this movie in a few years, there were certain roles where I was Googling, who is this actor? I did not realize that Carrie Coon my mind, White Lotus fame,
yes, of course,
is in this. I did not realize that Emily Ratajkowski,
yes, as the lover, as the young
right, is in this. So that was kind of really cool to go back years later, and now I recognize these actors when I hadn't recognized them previously.
Yeah, especially Carrie Coon, who was.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, especially Carrie Coon, of course, whose now profile is so much higher now.
Yes. And to your point about streamlining, I will say that one throwaway comment, and I don't know if it caught my attention before, but you see they live in this like McMansion in a suburban neighborhood. And then at one point, Ben Affleck says, there's been a real homeless problem around here lately. And I thought, what? That's not the kind of neighborhood that has a homeless problem. So it was probably a good decision not to try and go down that road.
It is also this cultural moment that the movie was past at that time, that when the book came out, it really was this moment of, the economic collapse and the real estate market collapsing, and a lot of abandoned, half-populated McMansion neighborhoods in the suburbs that moment that like there's all these people who are out of work all of a sudden who have a place to live, and there's these neighborhoods that are like these opulent homes that are only half inhabited, that by 2014 we were past that moment, as opposed to when the book came out in whatever 2010 2011. It was like immediately. Another reason I'm glad they kind of cut that out. It wasn't as pressing, even like you said. It feels, especially now looking back on it, it feels like a very odd thing.
Yeah, it wouldn't have aged well. Yeah, it wouldn't.
It didn't age well at all. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was, she's trying to illustrate something there, right? You live in this beautiful house, but the neighborhood's mostly vacant. And we had this experience, right? Like we would go see friends of ours who had bought these giant houses in these like new developments. And we would drive into their neighborhoods. This is years ago, of course, before this, not because of an economic collapse of any kind, but just because there was a lot of building in these more suburban areas. And we would find like one house in the neighborhood with the lights on. It's like, that's their house. All these other houses are vacant, but then, of course, we go visit them 5 years later and the neighborhood is more populated, right? So that is just, but at the time, it's kind of speaks to that, and also speaks to the fact that there were a lot of, and this is something that's continuing, right? There's I was just looking in the headlines recently, but of course, like Livingston Mall is being like demolished, right? So it's like these places that we hung out with as kids are all vacant, right? So it is, but it is odd that like it doesn't feel like it's something that's currently happening, although it probably still is happening in some parts of the country. But all that is to say that all that is a red herring, actually. This is just a little side detail that Fincher doesn't seem as focused on. And of course, and Flynn as well, in adapting her own material, has reduced the size of it. But there was the whole idea that she is a journalist. She was like a big entertainment writer for EW at the time when the magazine business was booming in New York. And then just as she was becoming an author, that was kind of collapsing, all the prestige that came with that. And it's exemplified to a large extent in the book and the movie, but primarily in the book, the whole idea that she comes from this famous family who wrote this book about the amazing Amy and how she could never live up to that. But also the whole idea that they became incredibly wealthy making these books. She had a prestigious magazine job. So as the financial crisis wasn't just a real estate crisis, it was also how they had lost their money because their investments lost value. They were living at a very high level, assuming that they would continue to sell books the way they did. She assumed that her salary would continue to be a boon to them in New York City. So part of the reason they moved away and part of the reason this illusion of the life they had goes away is because of all these financial things that were happening. The magazine and newspaper business going down, publishing in general going down, and the real estate market collapsing in some more populous areas. So all of that is in the book. And by the way, very well, much more well-defined in the first half of the book, but all streamlined in the film, because really what Fincher's fascinated by is the narrative you build around someone else, even when it's your spouse, even when you're telling the story of your own marriage, even when we're talking about the victims of these crimes and the narratives we build around them and how there's like a whole media industry around it. And in that way, it's really fascinating because the film is constantly making us, especially the first time you watch it, making us have an expected narrative and then defying it over and over again. It's just so much fun. It's just such a blast.
So fun. I agree. While still having something deep to say.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. I think what makes it so rich is the constant, not only the first time around, but the deep argument you can have about, is it misogynistic in its presentation of Amy? Is it just cynical that basically the other person that you live with even is unknowable? And the fact that like the performance of persona in general, which of course is, fascinating just to think that speech, the speech that she gives that became like memed to death, the cool girl one, which is that this is why I was saying that it's kind of integrating that piece of dialogue with the broader theme of the book itself. That's, I think, why it resonated so much, because that's exactly what it's about, right? It's about how all of that is just a performance. It's like a performance you give to get something you think you want. And then you ask yourself, when you got it, do you really want it or not? Which is a very big theme and one that I think that resonated with a whole generation of women.
Yes. And I don't remember if I had this view of it when I read the book or the first time I saw the movie. But I will tell you, when I watched this movie a few days ago, I thought, she's a psychopath for sure, but men have driven her to it.
I have a question as to whether, and of course, this is in Flynn's original book as well, so it's not like the adaptation makes her overly psychotic. I think that for some reason, in my recollection of the story, I cut her some slack in her psychosis. And this time around, I'm like, oh no, she's really psychotic. And the thing that it was, the thing that really put her over the edge is
that
not
first boyfriend, right?
Yes, it's the first boyfriend.
I agree. That's where you're like, okay, wait a minute.
Like, this has been going on for a long time.
But we only hear one side of the story.
Yeah. But I mean, the fact that he's like, this is a good point that, it's only one side of the story. But arguably, it's worse in the book. I had to revisit this because that part struck me so hard. In some ways, it's worse in the book, and some ways it's better, because in the book she drops the charges. In the movie, she allows the charges to continue. So he's like basically a sexual predator for the rest of his life.
I didn't remember that. Okay.
So yeah, she did drop the charges in.
That's a decision. Okay.
It is definitely an adaptation decision. I have some other interesting adaptation decisions I want to run past you. But the other thing that makes her look a little bit worse in the book, that one might make her look a little bit better. What makes her look worse in the book is that she apparently has done this to multiple people in the book. She had like a roommate in college that a female roommate that she stalked and whose life she kind of ruined. So it's like she has had a pattern of this where, and then it kind of reduces this all, it kind of defangs it a little bit because it's not just that she has been driven to this, which is her own narrative of it, but she obviously has deep psychological problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Considering, listen, I think there are a lot of women who have been made unstable and damaged by men, but most of us do not murder other people.
Right. And that's why the question is, is this misogynistic? And I think the film wants us to ask that question, and the book as well. Or is it just cynical? Because you can say, wow, she's a straight up sociopath, but it's not like anybody in the film, even the people we like the most, no one gets off scot-free, basically. Like
I think the sister's okay.
Yes, I think that she's the one pure character where she obviously loves him. She's not trying to live a life. She's not trying to live falsely. She, criticizes him when he messes up and blames him for putting himself in the situation. She's not happy when he stays with her at the end. Spoilers now at this point, spoiling everything. But when she makes that decision at the end. So I think absolutely she seems to be the one character that is, an honest broker throughout, because all the other main characters, he became like a layabout, started cheating, all because of his own insecurities. Obviously not only did he not live up to what she expected of him and maybe what he expected of himself, but also just is lying and conniving. I don't think, and maybe it's open to an argument, but I don't think he deserves what she does to him. But it's still that he's at least partially culpable for what happened to him. But everybody, right? Like this lawyer who comes along, which I love. I mean, Tyler Perry, by the way, not a fan of Tyler Perry's movies, but what a great performance he gives in this movie. And, but that character obviously is just there for the money, and the people who make an industry out of being his best friend one day and turning on him the next just to follow the narrative. The media in general is all seen as vultures. And, obviously, what's his name? The Neil Patrick Harris character, not a good guy by any stretch of the imagination. But then again, these are like a predator sees another predator in some way. So maybe they should be more simpatico if he understood exactly what she was about. So yeah, nobody is noble, to say the least. But they're all complicated, though. I don't think that anybody's really seen as a straight up villain either, except for her. She definitely, I think, is a villain in the film, even though the film doesn't really want to condemn her, in the end. Like, that's the other thing. You have this a lot of times, like in noirs or these type of psychological thrillers, you'll have and then the bad person meets their demise. She gets away with it in this film. She gets what she wants.
Yeah. Well, or does she? But yes.
Well, she gets what she thinks she wants, I should say. The one thing that they kind of redeem her, which is I forgot, I remembered it just moments before it's revealed in the film itself, is that she's not just getting revenge on him and then going to somehow get $1 million and live happily ever after somewhere on a beach somewhere. She actually wants to kill herself because she did love him, or at least she loved some version of him.
Yeah, I wonder about that. That is what she says her plan is, but it feels like what we learn about her is that she is far too, I don't know if narcissistic is the right word, but a person like her could never actually go through with it, I feel.
I agree that when push comes to shove, she would not be able to actually go through with it.
And I think that's played out a little bit more in the book than it is in the movie, but I'm not positive about my memory of that.
That she was the suicide, you mean?
Mm-hmm. I feel like they get into her thinking about it more and having trouble reconciling the idea of actually having to do it.
I think in the movie, the only way they represent it is that she has all these to-do things, which is going to your point of like whether she's actually going to go through with this or not. She has all her to-dos on the calendar. And then every week, like every Thursday, she's like, kill myself? Question mark? Kill myself?
Kill self? Question mark?
So the question marks do a lot of the work there. But yeah, so I agree that she's as a pure sociopath, she would not be able to do that. But the fact that she has obviously spent a lot of time fantasizing about this retribution against him, she does not have like a 6-year plan of survival. Like she has enough money in her belt.
Yeah.
Like how long is that going to last? And just surviving on cash, it's not going to last too long. I mean, I guess theoretically she could get a fake identity, get a job under the table somewhere, and live at, work as a diner somewhere in the middle of the country. Does she
Find a
want
man
that?
to take
She doesn't
care of
want that
her.
life. Yeah,
She could find a man to take care of her. She knows how to play the game.
that's true. She can doll herself up the right way.
Yeah.
What do you think about the, do you have any opinion on Fincher? I know you're not more of a movie head that I am, but was Fincher part of the reason you wanted to see this film? And what do you think about I think we agree that just that impeccable pacing of the editing is just giving you, even when you're rewatching, it's just giving you that piece of information, just like that little hit in your brain at just the right perfect moment. It's just a sheer pleasure to watch. But is Fincher like one of your go-to directors, or?
So as you pointed out, I am not super into movies, and I wouldn't say I have a go-to director. I do think this almost worked for me the opposite way of what you're describing, in that I don't think I had too much familiarity with him before Gone Girl. And I think what familiarity I did have was a little off-putting, but I wanted to see Gone Girl so badly that it didn't matter. And I think after that, I became more of a fan because I loved the movie so much. He did the Facebook movie, right?
Social Network, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I remember that I was thinking, oh, I want to see this movie. And especially it's a Fincher movie that should be good because I really enjoyed Gone Girl. But I think previous to that, my only exposure to him was, okay, I might be getting this wrong. Dead Ringers?
No.
No.
Maybe 7? Do you think he's 7?
Maybe 7. Okay. Which is upsetting at best.
Upsetting, yes.
So, I think it actually made me more of a fan than I had been.
Have you ever seen The Game? I think you would like The Game.
I do love The Game. I don't think I knew that was a Fincher movie. The Game is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, you should check out some. Oh, another one you might like, surprise you, is have you ever seen Zodiac?
Is that with Ryan Gosling?
No, it's with, oh man, name's escaping me today.
I'll Google it. Is it the one where they never
Gyllenhaal.
Actually find him?
Spoiler for Zodiac. Yeah, they never really catch.
Sorry.
Spoiler for reality. They never caught the Zodiac killer.
Is that true? They never caught the Zodiac killer.
They never caught the Zodiac killer. No, they never.
I don't think I knew that.
Well, they know who it is now because they finally cracked the code, but not at the time when the movie had come out. Not during the killer's lifetime.
Gotcha. I did see this, I think, but it did not make a real impression on me.
Oh, I thought you would like that because it's like, I thought you might like it just because it becomes a movie not about the crime, but about like people who love solving like crossword puzzles and how you become obsessed with the mystery over the reality.
I do love a crossword puzzle, and I didn't dislike this movie, but it didn't really do anything for me.
I think it's a hit and miss. Like for me, I love that movie, but I think some people, I thought it might work for you just because the way your brain's wired. But I understand that it's definitely, film that I love. And some people are just kind of like, it didn't really work for me. Yeah. Social Network, I figured would be something you would appreciate.
So good.
For sure. That's another film that it's so thrilling to watch. And I recommend it to like younger people to watch it, like my nephews. And they're like, I don't want to watch that. It's just a documentary about Facebook. And then they watch it and they're like, oh my God, it's thrilling. I'm like, no, it's so good.
The music is so good in that too.
Yeah, of course. Oh, and of course, you have Nine Inch Nails doing the music in this Social Network, but of course, also doing the music here. Great soundtrack for this movie as well, in Gone Girl. So let's talk about the casting here. I think another magical thing, you think about The Social Network, for example, just great casting in that film as well. Part of what Fincher does is cast really well. And I think that's so important for any movie. But you said this to me in your text messages that this is some of and Ben Affleck is, and it's only become more relevant over time, is like the greatest casting maneuver of like all times for this role.
Yeah, it's like in real life too. He seems to get himself into romantic situations.
Right.
He doesn't
right.
know how to get himself out of.
And I wrote this down actually, and it's just that I was been watching him recently in him doing all these interviews for that Netflix movie, The Rip, that he did earlier this year with Matt Damon, that crime thriller. And it was so perfect to watch some of that and then watch this movie, because in those interviews, he's like very energetic and he's like very smiley, and he's, trying to get a laugh out of the interviewer. And then like Matt Damon will be answering a question, or the director will be answering a question, and they cut back to like a 2 or 3 shot where you can see Affleck, and he has just that usual expression when he's that he's not on,
Checked out. Yeah.
and he is so checked out, and he's like slack jawed, and he looks a little bored and maybe a little sad, and it's like the whole sad Affleck meme that went around, and it's so perfect, because that could just be the way he looks, but it speaks to that fact that like it's like somebody who you think, well, what happens when someone who's probably just a regular person and obviously wants to perform for other people, he's an actor, right? And maybe like when the camera's not on you, that's how you kind of look. You're not expecting to be performing 24/7. And it's so great because that is what's happening in the movie, right? Where this guy who is like, everybody likes Nick, everybody loves Nick. And then all of a sudden he's just like in this very odd situation, and he's trying to be a people pleaser. So he's like smiling when they're taking pictures of his dead wife. It's just, the smirking photograph is such a perfect moment, because it's just like, that's the thing he does, right? And it's just amazing how, and just like The Social Network, by the way, which seemed like it saw into the future, because that movie came out just after a year or two of Facebook, and people being like, the whole idea that Zuckerberg is this like very neurotic and like this type of personality, and has a chip on his shoulder that everybody's out to get him, and that, is toxically online or whatever. It was a caricature that was trying to convey the theme of the film. The amazing thing about it is that Facebook has become exactly that toxic thing that
it's
was
the worst
presented in the movie, because the Facebook, it's so easy to watch that and be like, well, yeah, of course Facebook was like that. Not back then. It's like it has become the thing that the movie warned us about, which is astonishing. And that's what's so funny about watching Gone Girl 2. Again, Fincher seems to be like somehow able to see the future, that Affleck, of course, always had that part to him. That's why he cast him. But Affleck now has like, that is who he is in the public persona, which is his amazing synergy of the way the film resonates more now because of his likes and stuff.
Yeah, there was a few years ago a clip that was going around when he was with J-Lo, one of the times he was with J-Lo. And I think it was at the MTV Music Awards, but I'm not sure. And people were kind of lip reading that she was telling him, you look miserable, look like you're having a good time. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And she was trying to defend him, saying, it's not that he's having a bad time. This is just what he looks like.
This is what he looks like. Exactly. Right.
And he's neutral, but everybody is interpreting it as him being miserable. But
it really does. Like when he's just sitting there doing nothing, it looks like he's about to roll his eyes. It really does.
There is a clip that went around and around of him opening the car door for J-Lo and shutting it. And people were convinced he was like on the verge of a breakdown because he seemed so angry because of the way he slammed the door.
It's so crazy. There's a whole thing during COVID where he was like carrying the Dunkin' Donuts and the pizza.
Yes.
He just really, and then it really does look like as he's walking, like he's rolling his eyes, and he's walking on the street by himself. Like, who's he rolling his eyes at? Pretty amazing. I mean, of course, one of the most shockingly memorable scenes is the murder scene. But before we get to the murder scene at the end, what anything else that really stands out, like just in the movie itself? Oh, actually, before we get to any kind of standout scenes, you can think about that for a minute. But I want to talk about on the casting front, also getting Rosamund Pike, who not very well known and has, interestingly, not really just doubled down on this type of role. And again, I think it's perfect casting because Rosamund Pike doesn't really look like this, So the fact that they took somebody who's obviously an attractive woman, but this is not what she looks like, so that when she is in her Amy character, It's like she is wearing a mask, which is just incredible. I know you've apparently had seen many of her films, though, unintentionally, oftentimes.
So much that has happened in my life is unintentional. So why not? Yes, movies as well. But I will say, I really loved those introductory scenes of Nick and Amy meeting. I thought they were so, I mean, we find out later it was all an act on both their parts. But at the time, it felt very genuine and very charming. And you kind of fall in love with the couple.
Did you notice this? I noticed that it was very pronounced in the theater, and I had heard people complain about it, like it was a mistake. And I didn't notice it. I don't know if they've tuned the edit a little bit on Netflix, but it does happen as well. It's just not as notable as it was before, which is that I think that their dialogue on that date is dubbed afterwards. You know how like you go in and you do, you know, you re-record your audio if there's any kind of mistakes or if you need to add more dialogue. And it feels like over the course of the night, like when they're in the elevator and things like that, that the audio seems more and more out of sync with what's on the screen. And people, I remember at the time when the movie came out, people have been critical of like, I can't believe Fincher, who's so technical, would make a mistake. And I always felt that the first time I saw it, which again, it bothered me more then. This time it didn't really bother me until they get to like the elevator, like very much towards the end of the scene. It starts to really go out of sync. Just by like half a second, but it's noticeable. And I was like, even the first time I saw it, I'm like, that's not a mistake. Like, I think he's setting us up for this is fake, right? It feels fake because he's trying to tell us already that this is a little off because they're performing, right? It's not really them playing themselves. It's not really natural. And even like, you know, like the sugar moment in the sugar cloud is probably something he like pre-scripted as well, right?
Yes. I mean, the sugar cloud comes back in that really painful way with the girl in the bar, right? With Andy that he's having the affair with.
Yeah, when he uses the same move. That's the thing. That's the straw that broke the camel's back.
Ouch.
I mean, there's a lot of straws on the camel's back at that point. You have, she's no longer getting the money. You know, it seems, again, the shattering of these illusions. They're successful writers in New York. They're living very well. But actually, it's because she's getting money from this trust fund. And actually, her parents now need the money. So they've withdrawn the trust fund. And now they've lost their jobs. And so all these dominoes are falling. And now they're like living, you know, here's somebody who thought she was going to live this fantasy of the life in Manhattan. And then all of a sudden, and I think maybe this is another reason this kind of resonates with you, Sona, just as kind of like putting yourself into someone's shoes. You're someone who lives in Manhattan, obviously who always wanted to live in Manhattan. Could you imagine suddenly, overnight, having to live in some Midwestern town and you're basically living off of the money that the bar in town makes? It's like obviously quite a reversal of fortune.
I didn't understand in the scene where they move. She says, I didn't mind. I just wish he'd asked me. I would have minded.
Minded? Which part of it?
She says she didn't mind moving to Missouri. She just wished that Nick had asked her about it instead of assuming she would do it. I would definitely mind. I would mind. I have all the sympathy in the world for having an ailing parent. And I would be willing to uproot for a temporary amount of time. And maybe that's how this was presented. I don't really remember.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my assumption too.
But that's a big culture shock.
But do you believe that? So much of her narration is, of course, the other fascinating thing about it. It's a fabricated story as well, right?
That's true. Good point. Good point.
But she did go with him, right? So that's what's always so interesting about it is even if she fabricated this narration, significant parts of it have to be true because she is there now with him. That had to have happened somehow.
Well, I mean, this is the sick and twisted thing about the whole movie is that they do love each other, right?
Right. And I think what's interesting about it is she actually calls this out at the end. It's not only that they love each other, they love the versions of themselves they are with each other. So she is telling him, you were a better version of yourself when you were trying to impress me. And by the way, this is a metaphor for marriage as well, right? And whether we want to admit it or not, like is
it even a metaphor? I think it's just literal.
It just is marriage, exactly right. And that's what the other really amazing thing about the film is that it kind of literalizes that in the most extreme way possible. But it is exactly about that, right? Like you are with somebody because they make you be a version of yourself. And she's saying, you are not the best version of yourself unless I'm there with you. And he acknowledges that. That being said, I think that works really well thematically. But in this particular case, I'm like, man, I don't know if I'd ever sleep well again.
Well, I also think it raised the question for me, because I do believe that some people, okay, I'm going into this with the premise that some people can bring out the best in you and some people can bring out the worst in you.
Sure.
But both of those things are genuine to who you really are. You're not pretending to be someone that you're not. It's just that certain people bring out certain sides of you. And I have long believed that if you think about yourself, oh, I wish I was the type of person who would do X, then just go do X. And now you're the type of person who would do X.
Right.
Like, I wish I was the type of person that would get a tattoo. Nothing's stopping you. Go get a tattoo. Now you're the type of person that gets a tattoo. Right. And to me, that is not insincere. Like, if that's a genuine want that you have and you act on it, I always saw that as like a real thing about your personality. But this movie kind of, I think, poses the idea of what if you just were putting on an act for years on end, which seems exhausting, but I guess possible.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that is what's interesting about the film is that when you think about these, again, things that have become only more pressing, and I'm not sure if Anderson, maybe she was, Anderson, I keep saying Flynn, Gillian Anderson, not Gillian Flynn. But that Flynn was touching on this so early on, but maybe she was already seeing it because she worked as an entertainment profile writer primarily, that maybe she saw celebrities continuously having to play this balancing act of presenting one version of themselves and then behind closed doors, or even as they enter the room, be a different version of themselves, and how this is everything just a performance that they're continuously giving. That, of course, because of social media, it's not like that's only celebrities now. So many people perform these versions of themselves all the time, and it becomes exhausting. And not doesn't only become exhausting, it actually oftentimes leads to tragedy. There's so many of these true crime stories you hear about of people who were in these very toxic relationships or were committing crimes even. And then we only find out about it like after something terrible happens, because it's all about maintaining this illusion of this performance of personality. And I think that it's not only beyond the scope of like what celebrities do. I mean, everybody now kind of does this. And I think the film is kind of ahead of the curve again with dealing with that, something that has become more commonplace than probably ever before. Oh, and of course, like just to touch on a couple of the key scenes, there's the cool girl dialogue, of course. That's very, what do you think about the way that that was modified, that she modified her own dialogue between the book and the movie?
It was, do you have a specific example of how it was modified? I feel it was shorter in the movie.
It's shorter in the movie, and I forget off the top of my head because it was so iconic. There's like a sentence or two that was like the memed part of the story version that people literally put on their t-shirts, and she does not include it in the...
I want to go back and look that up then. I feel like I did love it more in the book than the movie, but I also loved it in the movie. Mostly because I think it makes... I can't remember how the ages in the book align with the age I was when I read the book or watched the movie, but I do think that I felt there was enough commonality that it made me reflect on who I am and how I act and what I want. And the same of my female friends of, you know, have we been somehow convinced that this is what a woman is supposed to act like? And is that something... Are those qualities, if we do have them, are they genuine to us? Or like, have we been brainwashed into thinking like, oh, this is who I really am. I love eating junk food. yet I never gain a pound. It's amazing. Like, I think it's very common. Well, I wouldn't say very common, but I think many women know, especially those of us that grew up in the Ally McBeal era, right? That like my early 20s were the Ally McBeal era, I think. You'd have friends that only ate when other people were around. Like they just never, like they never really ate if nobody else was there to witness it. And they just starved themselves the rest of the time. And I think they convinced themselves that was normal. So stuff like that, I do think it encourages some self-examination. And I love that.
To your point, though, about how there's this certain expectations of this being normal or not. And I think women, I definitely agree that women deal with that more. And maybe that's something that's because it's obviously from, or the narrative is primarily from her POV. We don't see more of the potential themes that, which I think are maybe more relevant today than ever before. It's kind of like crisis in masculinity that's going around. Maybe there's an opportunity to have a Gone Girl for men because he also has this kind of like the performance of being the nice guy, but being the former athlete and being cool and being like open-minded, but, and, you know, and doing the chores and by the way, I think people should share chores and such, but I'm just saying that the version that he's being for Amy, that of that guy, is also not true. And of course, once he's back at home and he's reconnected with the way he grew up and he's lost his job and he's like working part-time in college, he's mostly sitting around playing video games, right? And he's like not trying to impress her in any way. And that's what it comes down to. Like, her left to her own devices. She's just like, I'm so much happier now that I'm dead. That whole section where, like she said, she could just say junk food. Although I think she's strategically doing that to actually gain weight, to change her appearance. But, you know, it could just be like, I don't have to fixate on staying a size 2 anymore. And then alternately, he's kind of like, I'm just going to sit around and play video games all day. So she doesn't, like, she feels like, oh, this is such a relief to not have to put on this performance anymore. But she has no empathy in her perspective that that's what he has done as well. So he did that and she's not happy about it. But then she does it and she's like, woo, what a relief. So it's kind of like unexplored in herself. But I do think that it's not a failure of the book or the movie. I think this is thematically what's happening in the book, right?
Yeah.
And then they decide, you know, he stopped being the version of the false version of himself, this performative version, and she does as well. But then she comes back after going back to being, you know, Amazing Amy, and she tells him, you have to go back to performing the way you were before because that was better. And guess what? Like, it's like they both had the opportunity to be like, I'm not playing this game anymore. And now, trapped or not, they are back on point performing for each other again and performing now for everybody in America.
Yeah, I mean, that interview that Ben Affleck, that Nick does, where he's dropping all the little references to their relationship. He says something about the woodshed. He covers his chin like he did the first. I mean, brilliant. So brilliant. He knows exactly what she wants to hear.
He wears a tie. He wears a tie she bought him.
Right. And he knows exactly how to be that.
What do you think about the fact that we don't actually see that interview? Like, that's such a huge moment in the book where, and we hear the entire interview, and in the movie, it's kind of like we just see it playing on TV and everybody's just like, oh my God, you nailed it. But we don't see all of that. So what did you think?
That's true. It hadn't occurred to me at the time.
I think it works really well. I don't think we need to see it all.
Well done. Yeah.
And I don't think it's like, well, Affleck didn't pull it off, so we cut it out of the movie. I think it's intentionally like, it's one of those things where it's like, why show? Because your version of the perfect performance he gives is going to vary from person to person. So why show it? Just in your mind, he nailed it perfectly.
He hit
and
all
we
the
see
beats.
her reaction, right?
And that's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
You see her watching it. You see Neil Patrick Harris's character. I think it's Desi getting frustrated, pouring a giant glass of wine while he's watching her watch it. Like, all of it is so good.
And it's interesting to see her. She's on the road and she's like, I'm going to be myself and I could just eat junk food and live this scavenger life and leave Amazing Amy and leave all this behind. And she has that opportunity and she's like, I don't want this. I don't want to die. I don't want to live like
Not
this.
cut out for that life.
Right. And then she could be like, and then of course they steal her money. But I mean, she didn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars. She had enough money to get by for who knows how much longer. So then she calls Desi. And now it's like, I'm with like another predator, just like me, like two sharks. And she's like, well, this is the life I want too. Maybe. Right. And then he's like, you need, like he's doing to her what she's done in the past. You need now to perform for me that you are the ideal girlfriend and get back in shape and dye your hair and be that person again. And she's like, I don't like this either. I want to go back to Nick. So it's kind of interesting to see her kind of go through those like options and be like, no, this bed's too soft.
Yeah.
This bed's too hard. This one's just right. Whether Nick wants it or not, she's going back.
Seriously.
Any other scenes you want to key on? Oh, we got to talk about Desi's demise, right? So in the book, another huge difference, right? She like drugs him, puts some medication into his wine, and then when he falls asleep, she slits his throat while he's sleeping, basically. In the movie, oh my God, like I remember being shocked by the violence in the movie, and somehow seeing it again, I'm like, oh my God, was it this bad the first time? I don't remember it being like this. It's crazy. And right in the middle of them having sex is insane. Insane.
It was a choice. Yeah.
For sure. Fincher's like, we're going to go hard on this one.
Maybe just in case someone was feeling a little sympathetic.
Right.
No, she's a cold-blooded murderer.
And how hilarious is it for her to roll up, still covered in his blood, and fall into Nick's arms. And Nick's like, I'm going to kill you.
I mean, I felt like at the hospital, they would be like, maybe it's time for you to take a shower. Like they wouldn't just send for
She goes back home like covered in blood. I know. How crazy is that? I assume that in that circumstance that, they obviously need to get evidence and everything. And but then afterwards, they would give her that option. And she's probably just like, no, I just want to go home.
Yeah, I agree that there would be some reason for her to stay as is for a while. But yes, I would think before going home, they would say, here's a shower for you, because most people would not want to go home in that condition.
The other interesting thing is that we see him apparently living with her and then meeting with these folks on the side. Speaking of people who don't all get like this, an easy read on them, the police officers themselves are now meeting with him after the fact. And he's like, oh, you're my friend now. But they were ready to railroad him originally, just based on, again, their own internal narrative of what's happening, right? So again, it's complicated. Everybody has a complicated perspective. And we don't hate any of these people. We kind of like the cops, even though we know that that he's not actually guilty. Although I guess in the book, they let you think that maybe he is guilty for a longer period of time before the big reveal, of course. But that he's having these meetings like on the side where she doesn't know, but in the book, they're actually apart for like 8 months, and then they come back together and they meet in public, and that's when she says, I'm pregnant. And then I have a question as to, he even says, I want a paternity test. So I assume she's smart enough to know that that's going to be the case. But I mean, I assume she had some of his semen frozen or something, because
they do explain it, that they were having fertility issues.
Right.
And so they had gone to a clinic and he had a sample there. And apparently, according to him, she never followed through on her part of going to get tested. And then there was a letter that said, we're going to dispose of your sample unless you contact us. And he just ignored it because he figured, okay, nothing needs to be done. But she had that letter. And the assumption is that she contacted them and said, no, don't destroy it. And had IUI, IVF, whatever fertility procedure, and now she's pregnant.
I was wondering about that in seeing it again, because I was, for a moment, I'm like, oh my God, is that the Desi's murder baby happening there?
Yeah, it's a little confusing for a second.
Yeah, but of course, if he does have a paternity, she's going to have to be prepared for that. If they're going to have a paternity test, she's definitely going to be ready. And he's the daddy. He's trapped again. That's why you could read this as misogynistic in a way if you wanted to, because I mean, although it's just misanthropic period, so maybe not, but definitely the fact that, it's like a you could read the film from his perspective as like some kind of male nightmare. Some girl presents as the perfect girl and then ensnares you. And then just when you think you're out, she frames you for murder and then impregnates herself and traps you again. But isn't that what marriage is really about?
Well, I thought it was interesting, though. I don't know if it was the scene where he's telling his sister that she's pregnant or when, but there's a moment where he says, even with how bad it was, he really wanted to have a baby with her. So on some level, he does want it.
And in some way, maybe that's correct as well. Maybe his sister, Margot, reads it correctly.
Right.
In the fact that she's like, oh my God, you want to go back to her. So maybe at some point deep down inside, she is saying, I know you want me back. So it's like, I'm forcing you to do the thing that you actually really want to do, which is maybe the whole relationship dynamic she's always actually been seeking. So maybe that's the revelation there as well. All I know is that poor kid is going to have a really, really messed up upbringing.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be the picture perfect childhood until the child is old enough to realize everything that's going on.
You know what I just suddenly thought about right now? We watched the Linklater movie on Netflix a year ago about then Hitman, right? With Glenn Powell. Did you watch that with me?
Yes. Fun movie.
Remember how at the end, after they live together, it's like, she's like, in a way, right? It's like, I trapped you into the thing you wanted. And then they have a kid at the end. And it's like, and they live happily ever after. I'm like, that's the unexplored version of Gone Girl, where it's like, isn't that kid going to be emotionally traumatized for the rest of his life? And what is she going to do next time he dislikes her?
Yes.
So I did think about the parallel between those two, but maybe an interesting double feature between those two films. Okay, one more question I have for you before we wrap up, which is, what do you think of the legacy of this film? Not only in maybe like seeing into the future of like what Ben Affleck's performance of his personality would be, or how we all perform on social media, for example. Not only that, but the way it's kind of become part of the culture. And it made me think about, there's two cases. One is that case of that woman who was abducted from her house. She was like in the house with her boyfriend and they were tied up and she was taken away by this ex-military guy. And basically the cops just said, this is a Gone Girl situation. They falsified the story. They even sued her for a false claim, only to find out later on after he
it wasn't.
That it wasn't. And then, of course, you have that woman who was meeting up with her ex-boyfriend and pretended that she was like chained up somewhere and actually did chain herself up. Anyway, so I just think that what do you make of this? Not only like true crime in general and how things get framed as Gone Girl, but how it actually has like infested the actual culture in one way, maybe inspiring somebody to do something just like Amy. And on the other hand, maybe planting a narrative in the police officers' minds where they're like, well, this is obviously a Gone Girl situation. So it's kind of how interesting that the story has permeated the culture beyond, into the real world.
It is interesting. It's one of those like, does art imitate life or does life imitate art? It's sick either way, isn't it?
It's really troubling when you think about those examples where it's like, on the one hand, it's like those cops were so pigheaded and didn't believe this poor woman. And now they had to pay millions of dollars, by the way, in restitution. After the fact.
Yeah.
So it's like, isn't that terrible? It's like, yeah, but then you have the other example where it absolutely was the case that it was false, right? So it's so hard to put your thumb down and say, well, obviously you have to always believe the victim. And it's just like, well, she made that other woman created this. And of course, by the way, false allegations are very rare, but at the same time, that to just immediately not consider that when the story doesn't quite hold up isn't the correct solution either. So it's just interesting that I think it becomes literally in the headlines, real life Gone Girl, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And then, of course, when it reaches the media and it gets that branding, now that has its own force, right, behind it, where potentially like that woman who was actually assaulted, that case went for years. She was a pariah. And it wasn't until a completely different investigation that led back to her that she was exonerated from that, because it's not even like her police department solved that case. As far as they were concerned, that case was closed, right? So interesting how these things kind of, like you said, how the narrative becomes part of the culture itself. Anyway, just speaking to how this film for 12 years on is more culturally relevant than ever.
It's a classic.
It's a classic. And one more observation I had to make, which is so funny, is I remember, of course, growing up in the Good Will Hunting days, being almost exactly the same age as those guys in my 50s, and being, growing up and being like, oh man, someday I'm going to write a movie and I'm going to be found out. And oh man, that's the fantasy. And having that in my mind, and then seeing Ben Affleck in Gone Girl after literally seeing these guys in their 20s making that movie years before, and being like, oh my God, Ben Affleck's getting old. And now, of course, watching this movie after not having seen it in so long, and of course, Ben Affleck being so in the culture ever since then, and now seeing this movie. And of course, as we've all aged, I'm like, oh my God, Ben Affleck looks so young in this movie.
That's really funny.
It all depends when you're watching something.
It's all perspective.
Exactly.
All perspective.
But very funny. Rosamund Pike still looks great.
Of course.
She's not, what has she made? That she hasn't made anything really big in those 12 years since, right?
No, not that I can say off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I'm Googling her right now.
She did a TV show for a few years that I did not watch.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like she's done anything huge, but she is one of those actresses that just seems to always be around.
The Wheel of Time is the show that was on for a few years. Oh, I heard she's hilarious in Now You See Me, Now You Don't, the new version of it. The most recent one. I heard she's very funny in that. She's the villain. Very funny. By the way, I Care a Lot on Netflix, which we watched. That I actually think she's fantastic.
I agree.
All right, Sana. Thanks. And we will see if, as we keep dipping into Cape Fear, if there's any other classic psychological thrillers we want to.
I love a psychological thriller.
I know. I'll look for another good one.
Great.
All right. Thanks again for the conversation.
Talk to you later.